Burke discusses 3 levels of the iconographic approach. The first level, the pre-iconographical description, deals with natural meaning. In this level, we're simply identifying the objects in the image. The second level, the iconographical analysis, deals with conventional meaning, from which we can recognize a supper as the Last Supper or a battle as the Battle of Waterloo. The third level is the iconological interpretation, which deals with intrinsic meaning. And in this level, the underlying principles which reveal the basic attitude of a nation, a period, a class, a religious or philosophical persuasion can be seen. And it is at this level that images offer useful, but indeed indispensable, evidence for cultural historians. Erwin Panofsky is known for coming up with the 3 levels of the iconographic approach. And Burke discusses a quote by Panofsky that says, "An Australian bushman would be unable to recognize the subject of the Last Supper. To him, it would only convey the idea of an excited dinner party." And this stems from Panofsky's idea that in order to really understand an image, we must in turn understand the cultural, regional background from which this image derives. Regarding social and political images, Burke suggests that political uses of images should not be reduced to the attempts to manipulate the viewing public. He discusses the power of political cartoons and caricatures that present controversial topics in a way that resonates with general audiences. In simple, concrete ways, these cartoons present the main actors on the political stage as unheroic, fallible mortals. Works by cartoonists like James Gilroy, Honoré Daumier, and David Lowe convey public viewpoints of political figures throughout the centuries and reconstruct vanished political attitudes or mentalities. These are just 2 examples of political cartoons by James Gilroy and David Lowe, who lived in turning points in different centuries, but you can still see that there are similarities between their works, which showed the ways that the general public perceived these political figures. In the same way that political, religious, and social images may provide evidence to the philosophies and thought processes within a certain time period, Burke claims that we may gain insight of material culture in the past, that is, how physical objects were created and operated through the use of images. Materials and clothing used by ordinary people allow historians to study continuity and change of different social groups. Some elements of history, such as the history of technology and day-to-day life of ancient civilizations, would leave much to be desired if historians were meant to rely on textual elements alone. And I'll show you one example in the next slide. This piece, which translates to "Machine for Squeezing Juice from Sugarcane" by Jean-Baptiste Debré, allows historians to not only note the changes in technology over time, but to reconstruct them and provide visual understanding in museums. Burke also points to how some technologies and ways of doing things were also only really discussed through cave art, and we don't really have much evidence regarding that period of time through textual means. Burke then goes into images in relation to stereotypes. Regarding images that depict the other, Burke suggests that historians proceed with caution. He says, what is considered to be typical of a given culture may be the result of years of observation, but it may also be the fruit of hurried reading or pure prejudice. Even if perceptions of race have changed over the years, Burke notes that the way we continue to view groups culturally distanced from ourselves is through stereotyped terms, and images are not able to escape these stereotypes. He points to early days of colonization and New World exploration, during which, through images, other cultures are depicted as being distanced from the self, or other, in comparison with European colonizers. This is just one example. In this image, Brazilian populations were viewed as cannibalistic and savage by European explorers. But it's important to note that the concepts of the other span far beyond colonizers and colonized. So from views of Jews by Gentiles, Muslims by Christians, blacks by whites, peasants by townspeople, soldiers by civilians, women by men, and so on. Burke concludes his book by referencing several approaches that may benefit historians who wish to gain evidence from images. As we discussed, iconography and iconology, which deals with consciously expressed meanings. And on the flip side of that, he talks about psychoanalysis, which is the subconscious or repressed desires of the viewer that is projected onto the image itself. He also talks about structuralism and post-structuralism as a system of signs that generate meaning across relationships. And then he goes into feminist theory, in which the critical focus on the gender of artists, subjects, and general audiences in relation to the way the image is perceived is the main focus. And through a combination of these approaches, Burke discusses that the third way is for those who are concerned with degrees or modes of reliability, and with reliability for different purposes. These are just a few book reviews. Most of them that I was able to find were positive. I wasn't really able to find many beyond what was explained in the beginning of the book itself, but I believe that these 3 reviews they sum up the benefits of this book for historians, art historians, and just any scholar who wants to gain a better understanding of history through the fine arts. I thought it was interesting in Chapter 7, Burke references Edward Said's book on Orientalism when discussing visual viewpoints of the other. And this directly highlights what Emily